Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, first right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again at WARR Media. Our videos drop every Monday and Friday. Once again, videos drop every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at War Media. You can find the audio version of this podcast that drops every Tuesday and Saturday. Once again, the audio version drops every Tuesday and Saturday at War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms. Make sure you type in that search engine box WARR on Anchor. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com for more details and more fun articles about sports, culture, things along that line. And you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We got to get that on the big screen,
Yes,
Lakeena.
we do.
We got to do that. Subscribe. That's at WARR Media. And we are unapologetically fun, Lakeena. Since, of course, we are based here in Chicago, let's start off with some baseball. Both Chicago teams swept their series over the weekend. I'm going to do a 180 because we are professionals, quote unquote. We're going to go to the north side first. Yes, that's right, the Chicago Cubs. They swept their division rivals, the St. Louis Cardinals, over the weekend at the friendly confines at Wrigley Field. Of course, they are at 100% capacity now. From now until the rest of the season, the Southsiders will start later in the month with their homestand against the Seattle Mariners. We'll get to the Sox in just a minute. But the Cubs swept the St. Louis Cardinals. Looked mighty good doing it, too. Last Friday, they came back from a 5-1 deficit to win 8-5. Last Saturday night on national television, most of the country got a chance to see those ugly-ass uniforms. Great caps, but the most important thing was the Cubs dominating the Cardinals 7-2, and then of course this past Sunday night in front of a national audience on ESPN, they shut out the Cardinals 2-0 thanks to Zach Davies, Zach Davies' 7-inning shutout performance in the bullpen once again held it down. Lakeena, let's review the series going back to Friday's game. I was out doing a couple of errands as the Cubs were making their comeback from 5-1. Shout out to Pat Hughes and Ron Coomer on the Cubs radio network 670 The Score, the flagship station in Chicago. You could tell that those fans made a difference, and both of them made a comment about that during the comeback, especially during the Anthony Rizzo home run. Even though, of course, I'm not a Cub fan, I will give the organization, their players props when needed to be. This was one of those times because you could tell that the fans were into it. It wasn't a complete sellout like the last two games of that series was, but Friday's game, of course, the majority of the fans were into it. There were some Cardinals fans in the stands as well, obviously, because that's the Cubs' biggest rival. But when Anthony Rizzo hit that home run to tie the game on the Friday, you could feel the energy through at least I could. You feel the energy through the radio, and I'm sure watching on television you can feel and see the same thing. And the Cubs had I believe, the third best record in Major League Baseball in terms of home records. And you could tell they're going to use that to their advantage from now to the rest of the season. But Friday's game was just was important. It got the Cubs off to a schneid and it set the tone for that series. And of course, Saturday's game, Kyle Hendricks. He didn't pitch his best, but he did enough just to give the Cubs the chance to win. He was backed up by a very good offense. They dominated the Cardinals 7-2. As we told you guys on the show before, Kyle Hendricks, he might not be the pitcher that he was, just like Jake Arrieta. He might not be the pitcher that he was a few years ago, dominating everybody. But if he does well enough on the mound, to give his team a chance to win, he'll do it. That's what we saw on Saturday, of course. Last Sunday, Zach Davies, what a masterful performance. Only having the Cardinals give up 2 hits and 6 strikeouts, I believe it was. It was just a great performance. Of course, the bullpen did their thing. That Cardinals offense was just unrecognizable this weekend. So the Cubs, shout outs to them. I don't say that a lot on this program, being a professional, not a quote unquote meatball Sox fan.
Mm.
But the Cubs, they're on fire right now. They did what they have to do. Now, am I going to sit here and say that this NL Central Division is over? No. We're in the middle of June now, and it's still a long way to go. But if you're a Cubs fan, you should have more confidence and more expectations from this team from here on out.
Well, they have the Cubs. I mean, they have the best record, since I think like May 9th. So they've been on a tear these last 2 games. The bullpen's been lights out. Like I said, for anyone who watched that first game against the Cardinals, where they were down 5-1, and they had to start a rally, they kind of chugged their way through, and Anthony Rizzo with a masterful 16 pitch. He played that role very beautifully, and he ended up just smoking one that tied the game. That kind of sort of turned the corner for the Cubs. Now, it's just amazing that they're 5-1 against the Cardinals. They're 5-1 against the Padres. As this recording, they won 5 in a row. They're in the middle of a tough 4-gamer at New York. Against the Metropolitans. They get to Rom tomorrow, so it's gonna be interesting to see how. And he's been pitching lights out, so we'll see how they do against him. But I think if you're a Cubs fan, I think this is definitely a pleasant surprise. No one was expecting this team to be at, as of this recording, 38-27 this late in the season. Nobody had that. No one. And I think their pitches have been really good. Look, Arrieta, he's not the Arrieta from a few years back, but he's doing his thing. Hendricks, again, same thing. Has been the same pitcher he was a few years back, but again, he's doing his thing. Davies had a solid outing on Sunday, which I don't think he had his struggles, but it sounds like he's starting to find his groove. And and also too, like a lot of no names. They're getting a lot of contributions from guys that you probably thought that okay, maybe they could be used for the future. They're being used as as something you can kind of win with this team. Now, Kimbrel's been very solid. He got his 18 save. I think it's like near the tops in the National League. I mean, it's just amazing what this team has done. And I think David Ross is definitely kind of like, I think Kevin Clash from the Rays is probably like the leader in the clubhouse for manager of the year. But yeah, I think he's definitely Rossi. I mean, is definitely in the conversation what he's done. And look, we're not saying that this is like that the NL Central Division is over with. No. We're not saying that. We haven't seen the last of the Cardinals. That's not even, let's not, get them out of the woods just yet. The Brewers have been playing very well lately too. Their pitching has been really solid. So it's still definitely good. The Reds, we don't know what the Reds are going to be. They're up and down. But, I think that the Cubs the Cubs brass are realizing that we may have to be buyers here during the trade deadline. Now, again, we'll talk more as it approaches, but you're in a good spot if you're the Cubs right now.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Browns. We talk about the Chicago Cubs, the first place Chicago Cubs, holding down the top spot in the NL Central. You mentioned some of the no-name guys that come through all year for the Chicago Cubs. Just 3 names that came through in this series against the Cardinals last weekend: Jake Mrazek, Sergio Alcantara, I should say, and Patrick Wisdom once again. He came through. Jock Peterson. It's nice to hear from him again.
Yes.
As he did some damage against the Cardinals. So Jock Peterson said he was a former LA Dodger, a world champion from a year ago. He said he wanted to play every day. He's getting the opportunity with the Chicago Cubs. I know he had a brief setback with an injury early last month, but he's making most of his time right now. He's rewarding Cubs management for it, and it's paying off right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, the fact that they're using guys that are probably guys that you've never heard of, last year. I mean, the guys that were, playing their farm system last year. I mean, they're contributing. And I think that's sort of like the big thing here. And look, can they keep up? Look, we never know. I mean, it's a long season. Can the bullpen still be lights out? They had like the best, I think the best ERAs, bullpen ERAs in baseball since I believe about this time last month, May 9th. But look, will they keep it up? Probably not. But again, you know what? You're in a good spot right now if you're a Cubs fan. You're right there to think of it in NL Central, which we knew they would be. And I think look, they got a tough schedule this week, like I said, with we talked about it the last couple of podcasts. We got You got the Mets, early this week. You got the Marlins. You should be able to at least win the series with the Marlins. You got a 2-game against Cleveland. You can help out the White Sox there, guys. And over in you got to go back out west to Los Angeles for 4 against the Dodgers. At least try to split there. Dodgers been playing better lately. And then you got 2 weeks from now against the Brewers in Milwaukee. So this is sort of like your way to kind of like try to get those wins, perhaps get at least split the series against teams that you should split the series with. And perhaps, maybe at least split the series against teams. It's going to be we'll see what happens when we get against the Mets. It's going to be hard to sweep the Dodgers like you guys did, a few weeks back over at Wrigley. It's going to be hard to sweep the Brewers because their pitchers have been doing very well. Then you got Cincinnati after the Brewers series. 2 weeks from now. So this is sort of one of those times where you kind of just stack up those wins.
Yeah, as we said before, it's very important. You want to dominate your competition with teams with below 500 records. You want to do play well at or slightly above 500 against the teams that are equal or better than you. So that's what good teams do. I expect the Cubs to do that, barring any major injuries. I don't know their World Series good enough. Well, we shall see, especially as we approach the trade deadline. But right now, hopefully they don't fall. If you're a Cubs fan, they don't fall to a long losing streak. Yes, that happens. It's a long year, but hopefully they don't get into too many lulls because, as we said before, we'll keep saying it again, this NL Central division is up for the taking. I don't see anybody running away with it anytime soon. If you would have told me that St. Louis would be this bad, 1 game below 500 after leaving Chicago last Sunday night, I would have said you'd have been crazy. Now, we told you guys they're not as great as people thought they were going to be before the season, but to be 1 game below 500, being swept by Chicago as the last Sunday night, I would have told you were crazy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw them sweeping the Cardinals. I think even I didn't. And I thought they at least win the series. I think you would have been in good shape. The fact that they swept them, I don't know because their Cubs are really good or the Cardinals are just not that good. I mean, you never want to write off the Cardinals, especially this early, still very early in the season. But they've been pretty. I don't want to say dominant, but they played very well against the Cardinals so far this year. And look, I think that we'll see where this team is as they finish up as we get into the last few weeks before the All-Star break. Like I said, I went through their schedule. They have Philly, and then they have the Cardinals after the Philly series in July, right before the All-Star break. So if you can kind of be at least right at 500, if you can be kind of like tinkering in that 500 mark with the rest of the series, you could be at 45, maybe close to 48 wins, 45 to 50, somewhere around there, and you can be in good shape as we get into the trade deadline.
As of this moment, Lakeena, I want to take out this time to give props to Wilson Contreras, their catcher, and Anthony Rizzo. Both of those guys had big hits this past weekend against St. Louis. Wilson Contreras looks like he's finally started to come around at the plate. Anthony Rizzo, the same thing. We talked about what he said off the field. We're not going to get into it here. Catch our last episode if you want to know our thoughts about that. But as far as on the field, both those guys looks like they're starting to heat up. Chris Bryant, the same thing. He leads the team in batting average with the 297, and so with 13 home runs and 39 RBI. If this is going to be the last go around for Mr. Bryant, he's putting up some good numbers right now. Is it all-star worthy? It'll probably be because of the fan voting, but you look at Javi Baez with 14 home runs, he leads the team in that department along with a RBI with 40. Can you say that Javi Baez, I'm not going to say he's an NL MVP candidate, not even close, but can you say he's finally started to come around at least close to that form?
Yeah, I think he's definitely making a case for perhaps maybe not. I think he's kind of like in the leader in the. I don't think he's kind of like. I think he's sort of like right in like the top 5. I think if you want to go through, the stats and stuff. I mean, he's sort of showing you that look, maybe he can kind of reinvigorate that MVP form he had when he won the MVP a few years back, right? Look, it's going to be kind of an undertaking. You've got some guys that are playing very well right now. Fernando Tatis Jr., I mean, it's hard to, not mention what he's done. And some, Jesus Aguilar, from the Marlins. That's the guy that probably Cubs got to look out for this weekend. Castellanos and what he's done, and look, I think he's definitely in the leader. If you're talking about consistency with Brian, he's in like the top 15 or 20 in like many of the batting categories right now. So you can probably say that he could be like in that team pitcher for MVP, but maybe not. I don't know. But again, we'll talk. We'll wait and figure out the whole contract situation. That's a whole like another discussion for another episode. But look, I think he's definitely like regaining the MVP point. I think also having the crowds too, I think helped. You can tell how big of a difference having 100 capacity made. Because if that had been 5-1 on Friday and there was still like very limited capacity, like Cubs would easily won that game, or they would have gotten their butts kicked. The fact that there was 100% capacity, I think they were able to feed off that energy, especially with what Rizzo did. Like a great 16 pitch at bats. I mean, I think having that sort of energy, I think, can only help a team.
Yeah, and the Cubs fans are loyal and they're widespread, not just in the city of Chicago, but across the country. And like we've been saying, as soon as the things are starting to open up now, and more people can attend these games, you're going to see more of an impact. Not just with the Cubs, but with the White Sox as well. We'll get to them in just a minute. But you're going to see that with all these teams around baseball, is capacity is opening up to 100%. You're starting to see these reopening day campaigns. You saw with a few teams this weekend. You're going to see it this coming week and next week until the end of the month here, where everybody's at full capacity. So it's not going to hurt. It's going to help these teams not only on the field but off the field, which these teams need to make their money.
I think that's sort of the driving force, right, Sid? The fact that a lot of these teams, especially with the Cubs, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but the fact that they should be able to get some of that money back, and they'll be forced to kind of be, like I said, be buyers in the trade deadline. Which, if they had not been able to get back at full capacity, we'd be talking about trading a lot of these guys. So what difference that makes. And I think also too, as far as the Cubs, I think that they're getting contributions from your top guys like Baez and, like you said, Contreras, Hayward. He says some comments too, but we won't talk about that. Look, go back to our last episode if you want to. We're not going to rehash it. But look, I think the fact that they're getting contributions from everybody, not just the stars of the team, but also too like sort of like the no name guys. And I think look, Patrick Wisdom had a couple of big hits this weekend for the Cubs in the Cardinals series. So I think the fact that you're getting like contributions from everywhere, I think the Cubs, if you want to say that when we do our mid-season MLB report cards, whatever, you got to think that the Cubs are definitely going to be right there as sort of the surprise teams in a good way.
Yeah, I could go along with that. Many of us experts and talking heads, including truly thought they were going to be at the middle of the pack at best, but they're exceeding expectations right now. Like you mentioned, you're getting contributions for no-name guys, not just the superstars, but the bullpen has held it down all year. The starting staff is not the greatest, but a couple of their guys have stepped up, has shown the way, like Zach Davies and Kyle Hendricks, after he's struggled to start the year. So the starting rotation isn't the best, but they're doing enough right now. The bullpens held it down for the entire pitching staff, so you had to give those guys credit first. Of course, we talked about this the last couple of weeks. GM Jed Hoyer, he has some work to do. Will he able to get a starting pitcher? Everybody's looking for starting pitching. Will he add another bullpen arm? I know most people will say no, he doesn't need to do that, but in this game of baseball, you
never have too many.
Thank you.
You can never have too many bullpen arms. And
is he looking at it? Right. Yeah. Is he looking at another big bat? They could definitely use it. So they have options here between now and July 31st. So still a little bit of a month and a half away from the trade deadline. Yeah,
it's a good problem to have here, Jed Hoyer, I think, because look, no one really expected this team to be this good. With the personnel that they have. So I think the fact that they are kind of still right there in the NL Central, which look, like I said before, if they get those contributions, they play well, they can be right there for a division, and they are. And look, we'll see what the priorities are going to be. I mean, I know they don't want to have to. I know he doesn't want to have to touch their farm system because they just reloaded it. So it'll be interesting. They may have to get a couple of mid-level guys, maybe get a bat or look, you can always use an extra bullpen arm. So we'll see what Jed's pretty smart. So he worked, kind of like he was sort of Theo's mentor. So although he does have a couple of his own sort of tricks up his sleeve too. So we'll see what he does.
Before we move on, did you check out the bleacher shots from ESPN on Sunday?
I did.
With the cup snake. Of course, they started it off here on the south side, which is so silly.
Yeah, the beer snake thing. Like, it's just it looks really. I don't know about you, but it just kind of looks silly. But look, the crowds are back, so knock yourselves out.
I know those people who came up with that idea are doing it for fun, doing this for social media. I'm sure of that. But it's just like the wave. I don't participate in it. I'm a grown man. I'm all for people having fun as long as you're not impeding on my fun. But the cup snake, I'm not going to participate in it. Okay, that's something silly for people to do, but I know Matt Vasgersian and A-Rod, or a fraud, some people will call him. I know they were going crazy too on the broadcast. It's like, okay, so I'll ask Lakeena and see what she thinks of it.
Yeah, look, I'm right there where, like, look, it's juvenile, it's silly, but folks, look, people, as long as people are not doing anything stupid or say anything stupid, let them have their fun. It's fine.
All right, let's move over now to the south side. The Chicago White Sox, the 41-24 as of this recording. First place Chicago White Sox in the AL Central. They did what they were supposed to do. They swept the A.J. Hinch cheating-ass Detroit Tigers. Last Friday's game was a nail-biter. It shouldn't have been, even after that long rain delay. Liam Hendricks blew the save, but Aaron Bummer, which we'll speak about him more in a minute, Aaron Bummer came in and did what he actually was supposed to do. Yep. Got 3 outs, and the Sox held on for a 5-4 victory. Last Saturday's game, they blew out the Tigers, scoring double-digit runs. Brian Goodwin made his debut in the White Sox uniform, had 5 RBI contributing to that victory. And, of course, last Sunday, 4-1, they defeated the Detroit Tigers. Carlos Rodon flirted with a no-hitter again before Miguel Cabrera, I believe, had that double off the left field wall in the 7th inning. Of course, if you remember the play before, Carlos Rodon, I believe, got squeezed on the call on the slider. That should have been strike 3. I'm not going to sit here and say that Rodon would have had the no-hitter for sure, but Rodon has something to say with the home plate umpire. It was respectful. He didn't chew him out or anything like that, but Rodon got squeezed on that call, the pitch before. But regardless of that, the White Sox did what they had to do. Tony La Russa had his quote-unquote Sunday lineups the last 2 games of that series. Of course, he realized that the series, the next 2 series are important right now. They're playing the Tampa Bay Rays as we speak on the south side. We'll give you our Cisco and Eva review on that series coming up in our next episode later this week. And then, of course, they travel to Houston to take on the Astros this coming weekend for a big 4-game set. So everything played out perfectly for the White Sox this past weekend, last weekend in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying, they did what they were supposed to do by being a Tigers team that they're clearly better than. And look, I'm kind of feeling like, look, okay, you beat Detroit. I mean, okay, yeah, get beat, whoop to do. I mean, look, you're supposed to beat them. Let's see how you do against one of the top teams in the AL. And that's also, you probably say in the majors. They've had the best record in the majors since probably around, if not after the Cubs or maybe right before the Cubs, since in early May, and that's with the Tampa Bay Rays. And their pitch has been really solid, and they've been hitting the ball well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but. But like I said, I mean, you did what you're supposed to do. I mean, look, Carlos Rodon has one of the top ERAs in the majors. They're both him and Lance Lynn are in the top 5 when it comes to ERA in the majors. Look, Liam Hendricks. I mean, yes, he's a little bit quirky, but he's actually been pitching very well. The bullpen's been pitching very well. I've been yelling at the bullpen for like the last month, it seems. Yeah, but it's true. But they did what they're supposed to do. I mean, shoot, I'm blanking on the name of the guy that just hit his first home run. Darn it! But I'm blanking on his name. I'll try to look it up. But yeah, I mean, Tim Anderson has some big hits. He had about 5 RBIs. Brent Goodwin, that's the guy I was talking about, who hit his first. What a way to get his first major league game by getting his home run, and Brian Goodwin, I should say. Yeah. And I mean, that's the kind of like the controversy you want. This is sort of a journeyman guy, played for the Pirates for a while. Guy that kind of was brought in, and he had a very nice series in Detroit for the White Sox, and that romped 15-2. And look, Dylan Cease had a good outing. I mean, again, it's just the Tigers, so again, you can kind of tear for what
he's 8-0 against them in his career.
So that's so. But they take that with for what it's worth. But I mean, look, let's see how they do against the Rays in these next few days. I mean, that's going to be really the thing of what can they be sort of like the AL contender that they can be despite the injuries.
Yeah, for this series against Tampa Bay, you have Lance Lynn, who pitched last night. Of course, you have Keuchel going tonight, and you'll have Giolito going tomorrow. So the White Sox have their horses against a very good team. The pitching matchups lines up in kind of in their favor. Of course, you go to Houston over the weekend, you'll have the only person you won't have pitch will be Giolito, I believe. And so you have Dylan Cease, Rodon, Lynn, and Keuchel for the Astro series. Only Giolito won't pitch in that series. And so everything's lining up for the White Sox right now. We know that their starting pitching is the formula for this team right now, especially given all the injuries that they have suffered this year. So it's pitching, defense. They're not hitting a lot of home runs. I know a whole lot of people are not talking about that, but that's okay as long as you produce and give enough runs to support your starting pitching staff. That's the way this team is going to win ball games. That's okay. I love the home runs just like everybody else, but as long as you win ball games and put enough runs across the plate, I'm good with that.
And I think small ball. I think that's really what's going to be the key here is the small ball, not the long ball. And I think, look, these last few series that they've actually they haven't had to hit a lot of home runs because they're letting the small ball and playing very smartly with the bats. And look, I think I love the home runs too, but again, that's not what's going to win you a title. A lot of times it's going to be the small ball, and the White Sox have done just that. So we'll see how they do against a very tough Rays team. A very sort of similar. You kind of said they're very similar, sort of in a lot of ways. I mean, they got a young squad too. Their pitching has been very solid. I should say, Tyler Glasnow has, I believe, has like one of the tops when it comes to strikeouts. So that's gonna be very tough for the White Sox to, when they pitch against him. But I mean, look, if you can at least win the series against the Rays, I think you can kind of say, okay, we're contenders in the AL, and look, we'll see how they do. I mean, look, you got your guns, going out. It's a pretty good, and Tampa, they don't hit a lot of home runs either. So there's, like I said, they're very similar. I mean, look, Austin Meadows is like one of the tops in the AL and RBI. So that's another guy that you're going to have to look out for too if you're the White Sox early this week. So again, also Houston, we'll talk about the Houston series later this week, but that's going to be another tough series. So this is sort of one of those things where if you can go 4-3 or at the very least, you can kind of feel like this is a successful sort of part of that schedule. So again, you got swept by the Yankees. People are kind of like, they're kind of like prove it mode with the White Sox. I mean, prove to us that you can be like right there and play with the big guns in the AL.
As you mentioned, Lakeena, a tough road ahead for the White Sox. As long as they don't fall flat on their face, they'll be okay. Even they do fall flat on their face, they're still the best team in the Central Division. We'll get to the other teams of the division in just a moment as we do our weekend roundup. But the White Sox are playing well right now. You have other guys stepping up. Danny Mendick has done an awesome job filling in for Nick Madrigal at second base. Will he be the second baseman come playoff time? We shall see. We'll let GM Rick Hahn deal with that if he can make any moves to get a veteran second baseman in there. But he's done a fine job. I want to focus in on that White Sox bullpen. Evan Marshall has stepped up these last few games, including that series against the Tigers. Aaron Bummer, still have my issues with him, even though what he did on Friday was tremendous. You also have Cody Hewer, who's been given a chance, and I like him. I really like Matt Foster. He's really been stepping up. He's one of the young guys in that bullpen. So hopefully that middle relief will be consistent. Like you said, Liam Hendricks has gotten his act together over the last month and a half or so. So I think he's a definitely shoe-in to represent the White Sox in the All-Star game next month in Colorado. I believe Carlos Rodon will be an All-Star, and I believe Lance Lynn will be an All-Star. So those three White Sox potential All-Stars right there. Do you think among the hitters, do you think it's a showing for players like Yohan Mercado or Tim Anderson to represent the Sox next month in Colorado? I believe they're borderline at best right now.
Or I think probably if you want to talk about the hitters, who has the best shot is probably Jose Abreu because of name recognition, and also too he has 49 RBIs as of right now. So that's one of the tops in American League. Of course, we'll talk about Mr. Vlad Jr. in a little bit, but I mean, yeah, I think he's probably like has the best shot at probably getting in. Like you said, Anderson's probably borderline. Moncada's probably borderline, but I think if anybody, I think Abreu probably has the best shot among the hitters.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So hopefully with one more White Sox in there, of course, people can vote at MLB.com, and hopefully these players can turn it on to make their case better between now and at the end of the month. Lakeena, let's go now to the best and worst from this past weekend from around Major League Baseball. What stuck out with you?
Oh, I just mentioned
besides Vlad Jr.
well, hey, you're cheating.
Well, you could.
Well, no, okay.
No, you can talk about Vlad Jr. Go ahead.
No. I'll pick somebody else because I'm sure you probably got him as one of your best.
No, you go ahead.
No. I'll let you know. I'm being a nice friend and co-host. I'm letting you have Mr. Vlad Jr. because for what he's done. Okay, well, while she can go to across the league and do something, a guy that's doing very similar numbers, Mr. Fernando Tatis Jr. His third career Grand Slam, his 19th home run of the season. Over the weekend, only Adrian Gonzalez with 20 and 09 has hit more home runs than the player's first 50 games played in a Padres uniform in history. Tatis Jr. did his 49th game. So, just saying that, just saying with that. But I gotta say again, the Rays and what they've done. Like I said, we've mentioned them. Of course, the White Sox are playing them right now in their series. We'll see what they do against the White Sox. I have to say, I mean, nothing really really sort of stood out to me this weekend. I mean, the Mets were sort of, and the Giants are sort of right there, but they kind of, they had a tough series this weekend. The Dodgers are right there. They're only a game back right now. The Padres are 3 games back, so it's probably going to very likely end up between those three teams in the National League West. Let's see. Nothing really said, oh my God, I gotta talk about this other than who we just mentioned. But Sid, you have the floor, my friend.
I'll get this out the way since you won't say it. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the Toronto Blue Jays, as we told you guys, they have a great offense. Their starting pitching is still in question, but we'll give some love to their offense. They took 2 or 3 from Boston over the weekend. It should have been a sweep, in my opinion, but the Blue Jays did what they had to do. Vlad Guerrero Jr., as I said before, he hits just like his daddy, Hall of Famer Vlad Sr. So Toronto, as we told you guys, they can bring out the big bats. You have him, you have Bo Bichette, Dante Bichette's son, and of course you have Craig Biggio's son on the team right now. And so I like that lineup. It's just that it's going to come down to their pitching. Will they be able to hang in the AL East race with the Tampa Bay Rays? And, of course, the team that's struggling right now in that AL East is the New York Yankees. Yeah. Both them and Philadelphia had a rare Friday off, so they played a quick 2-game series in Citizens Bank Ballpark, and Philadelphia swept those 2 games.
Yeah.
So the Yankees were swept on the road. Aaron Boone went off on one of the media members following Sunday's game. Are they complacent to losing? He lost his mind for 5 seconds, but will the Yankees turn around? Let's hope so, because we mentioned in the last couple of episodes they have injury issues right now. The Atlanta Braves, we keep saying this, when they're going to turn it around. They avoided a sweep on Sunday by winning 6-4 over the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are sneaky. I'm not saying they're going to turn around and make a surprise playoff push, but those are one of the teams that you can't take your eyes off. So the Atlanta Braves are still a concern for me. We mentioned Philadelphia. They swept the Yankees in a brief 2-game series last weekend. The New York Mets had their issues with San Diego. Jacob deGrom in his start on Friday left with a a finger injury.
Yeah.
Hopefully he pitches against the Cubs later on this week. And so the NL East, that division is up for grabs. As I told you, the Mets, they have a potential to be better, but I'm not a big believer in them right now. As you mentioned, Tampa Bay, they swept Baltimore over the weekend. They're here in Chicago playing the White Sox as we speak. Cleveland couldn't finish the job. The Mariners got the best of them on Sunday, so the Cleveland won 2 out of 3 in that series. Shane Bieber,
Yeah.
he didn't look great in that start. I did watch some of that game live via my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so he struck out 8, but he gave up 10 hits, and he pitched only 5.5 innings. So, and it happens with good pitchers that sometimes they just don't have it on that particular day. But I believe Cleveland will be fine. I think the Sox will eventually pull away from them in terms of the division title, but right now Cleveland's still competitive. The Milwaukee Brewers, as we mentioned earlier at the top of the show, that swept the Pittsburgh Pirates. I had a chance to watch some of their series live. So Brandon Woodruff did his thing last Friday. The Milwaukee, they have a good bullpen, including Josh Hader, their closer. He's one of the best in baseball. So the Pirates, they're the cellar dwellers. And so the Brewers did what they had to do in taking care of a lesser opponent.
Yeah, I would also say the Angels, they've won 6 in a row as of this recording. But again, they swept the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks fired their entire hitting staff, so I'm not I'm not gonna give them look, it's nice what Joe Madden's doing right now, and I think Shohei Ohtani has took a couple of games off for rest, but I don't think they're gonna compete with the A's or the Astros for the AL West. I just don't see it. So but again, look, they got a nice little winning streak going. So
yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of the Astros, they took 2 or 3 from the Minnesota Twins. That Twins team is free falling fast. How many players they're going to potentially put on the market between now and July 31st for the trade deadline? Joe Barrios, maybe Nelson Cruz, maybe Miguel Sano.
That'll make
who
you
knows?
happy.
Yeah, yeah. So who knows what's going to happen with this Twins team in terms of the trade deadline, and also Oakland too. They take care of Kansas City at home this past weekend. I watched some of those games. This is a sneaky team, but watch out for Oakland. I still say the White Sox are the best team right now in the American League, but any team they can sneak up on them, that's Oakland. I know Oakland beat the White Sox in the wild card series last year, but this year is a totally different Sox team, so it's going to be tougher. But I'm keeping my eye on Oakland first, and of course Tampa Bay second.
Well, yeah, like I said, just do your thing in that series against Tampa Bay and also Houston too this week. Just do well this week, and people will kind of take you seriously among the best and the elites in the AL.
Yep. Key series that's coming up for this week around baseball. You have Baltimore at Cleveland. You have Cincinnati at Milwaukee. Pittsburgh at Washington. Of course, you have the Cubs and the Mets and the White Sox and Tampa Bay battling as we speak. Also, you have San Diego at Colorado. Of course, the Angels and Oakland. That's a AL West battle. The Diamondbacks will take on the San Francisco Giants. From the Bay, the Twins will take on Seattle, and of course, Philadelphia will travel to Los Angeles to take on the Dodgers in the big four-game series. So as we said before, Philadelphia is still in it somehow by a miracle. Of course, the Dodgers did what they had to do last weekend at Dodger Stadium, taking care of business against a young Texas Rangers ball club.
Yeah, and look, I was afraid for them because the Rangers left for a couple of those games, but they ended up winning this series. But that should be a lot of fun against the Phillies and Dodgers. I mean, no love lost between those two teams, but we'll see what happens with that.
And one more series I forgot. The Blue Jays from Buffalo will host the New York Yankees. So the Yankees need to turn it around. Quick. Big series for both teams. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Blue Jays, you swept the Yankees last time you guys played over at Yankee Stadium. So we'll see what they do, in their home away from home, if you will, in Buffalo. So, I mean, you got to commend what the Blue Jays have been able to do. They're kind of like been sort of living out as suitcases. They can't play in their home stadium in Toronto, so they're stuck playing in Buffalo with their home games. So we'll see what they can do. They so far so good. They've been hanging on, and hopefully they can kind of like they just get their pitching together. They could be kind of like right there in the AL East. But who knows? Maybe they can play for one of the wild card spots.
Yeah, it looks like Toronto may play back home after the All-Star break. We shall see. So, like you said, they've been dealing with a lot of adversity playing in 2 or 3 cities. So we'll see how they do this week against the Yankees. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Lakeena, since we have a few minutes left in this segment, let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Let's do it Eastern Conference style.
Yep.
Last Friday, down in the ATL, as the kids would say, the Atlanta Hawks faced off against the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 3 of that series. Philadelphia won that game handily, 127-111. Joel Embiid led Philadelphia with 27 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Trae Young led Atlanta with 28 points, 8 assists, and 2 steals. Lakeena, the story for me in Game 3 was Philadelphia proved to be the better team. As we mentioned in our last episode last week, they did what they had to do to win Game 2. The pressure was on them. They go down to Atlanta in Game 3. They immediately, pardon my ADO check, immediately took away home court from Atlanta.
Yeah, I think this is I think they kind of started riding that ship. I think they were kind of surprised at how the Hawks responded in Game 1. That's why they ended up losing that game. But I think they've taken control of the series now. Yeah, I think Embiid has stepped up. If he can kind of keep his temper under control, because we saw what happened in Game 3. He almost lost for a So I think he needs to kind of like keep his temper, sort of like in check, and they can kind of finish the series up. Ben Simmons needs to step up though, because he struggled the last couple of games in the series.
Yep, I know he had a bounce back game with 18 points off of 7-11 shooting. He needs to still get better at the free throw line, 4 of 8 for 50%, but that's got to get a whole lot better. On the flip side for Atlanta, John Collins had 23 to go along with 7 rebounds. Of course, Clint Capella did not have a good game. He only scored 8 points. He did grab 16 rebounds, but he could have done better, in my opinion, offensively. Danilo Gallinari, yes, the brother with the bad mohawk. He was the only person that did well off their bench, scoring 17 points, including 9 of 9 from the free throw line. But no one else stepped up for the Hawks off their bench. Lou Williams came the closest at 13 minutes of action, totaling 8 points.
Yeah, I think they're really going to need their bench guys to kind of step up and help out Trae Young. He can't do it by himself. I mean, Capella has to play better, and like you said, Gallinari and also the guys off the bench need to start playing a little bit better, because if not, this series is going to end quickly for the Hawks.
Yes, it's going to end very quickly for the Hawks. Now, the other Eastern Conference semifinal series has taken another twist. That's the Brooklyn Nets against the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 4 took place last Sunday from the Fiserv Forum. The Milwaukee Bucks defeated the Nets once again, 107-96, tying their best-of-7 series at 2 games apiece. Kevin Durant led the Brooklyn Nets with 28 points, 13 rebounds. Giannis Antetokounmpo, a.k.a. the Greek Freak, led all scorers with 34 points for Milwaukee. He also grabbed 12 rebounds. Lakeena, Game 4 was ugly to watch. Kyrie Irving, as of this recording, he's questionable for Game 5 tonight. Game 5 will take place at Brooklyn's Barclays Center. Kyrie Irving injured his ankle before the end of the first half last Sunday. He's day-to-day with that bad ankle injury. He was walking off with crutches and a boot following Sunday's loss. Lakeena, I think Brooklyn still has enough to get it done, but they really did not play inspiring basketball over the weekend. We talked about in our last episode how they could have still won Game 3. They let that slip out of their hands. Game 4, I'm not going to say they quit, but it's just something just wasn't there. Even before Kyrie's injury, something just wasn't there. That second half was just uninspiring to watch. Now on the flip side, Milwaukee stepped up, including P.J. Tucker. He scored 13 points. He averaged 3 points through the first 3 games of the series, but he was one of those unsung heroes who stepped up in Game 4 last Sunday from Milwaukee. As we said before, someone needs to help out Giannis. Chris Middleton added 18 points, but P.J. Tucker did his thing. He finally decided, hey, let me step up here and show my worth. He added 13 points.
Well, look, I think the P.J. Tucker, I think that's a career high for him in the playoffs. So I think, look, good for him for stepping up. He had 13 points, like you said, Sid. Giannis, did what Giannis did Giannis things. I mean, Look, I think for me, I think that I was going back and forth watching between that game and a couple other things I was watching, and like you said, so they were the Nets were playing well even before Kyrie got hurt. So for people to say that oh well they went down after Kyrie's injury, no, they were playing bad even before that. It was just seemed like they were sort of just sleepwalking and being lackadaisical and just kind of like playing like mummies. And KD was at least trying. He had 28 points and 13 boards. But look, Blake Griffin, where are you, buddy? Where are you?
8 points, it's not the way to go. Joe Harris, same thing. 8 points, not the way to go. Bruce Brown, 7 points, not the way to go.
Yeah, and they've got the guys that can do it. I mean, they've got the guys. They go, Jeff Green, where are you? You need to step up. Alize Johnson. I mean, come on. I know you scored 0 points, but you can do better. Nicholas Claxton, come on. You've had double digits. During the regular season. Come on. I think they've got the depth to do it. I think that they just need to play a little more inspired. Look, if Kyrie is going to be gone for Game 5 tonight, you need to these guys need to step. The guys from mentioned need to step up. And I know that there's a lot of Nets hate for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I don't get it. But everybody said, "Well, look, this is y'all time now." But look, if they end up being the Nets, it's going to be an asterisk there because the Nets were not at full strength. If you want to beat a team like the Nets, you want to be at full strength. You don't want to be like, okay, one guy has a bad hammer, another guy has a bad ankle. Because if you're going to end up playing the Sixers. The guys there are not going to, give you that sort of, leeway there. So, look, I think if you're the Nets, I think you need to, win this game tonight and get back control of the series. And I think they can do that if they can get those guys that we mentioned to step up more.
Yeah, it's the best 2 out of 3 series at this point with the series tied at 2. Brooklyn has the home court advantage. And if you're Brooklyn, you have to do everything to protect home court and get the series over with as quickly as possible because the injuries that keep mounting up for you. So you definitely don't want to give Milwaukee confidence. I just want to highlight a couple of other unsung heroes from Milwaukee the last Sunday in their Game 4 victory. Brian Forbes had 13 minutes of action, added 10 points. Drew Holiday, been asking for him where he's been. He added 14 points and 9 assists. And Pat Connaughton, 8 points in 22 minutes of action. So the Milwaukee is going to have guys step up on a consistent basis to help out Giannis. Yes, it starts with Chris Middleton, but it's going to have to trickle down to the other guys we mentioned as well with P.J. Tucker and Bobby Portis. I know he was scoreless on Sunday, but it's going to have to trickle down to the other guys, especially with the key guys coming off your bench. So if Milwaukee could get a big contribution for their supporting cast, no matter what Brooklyn's lineup looks like, they'll be able to win this series. But I said Brooklyn, and since I'll stick to that, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point that it'll go 7 games, especially after Kyrie's injury.
Well, the other guys we mentioned for Brooklyn need to step up. Jeff Green needs to step up. He's done it before in the playoffs. Clax needs to step up. Mike James needs to step up too. And look, Tyler Johnson also needs to step up as well. Look, I think that we saw these guys sort of hold down the fort with all those guys hurt in the regular season. They need to do it now in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a collective effort whether Kyrie plays tonight or not. That does it for segment number 1 on Second City Sports. Segment number 2 is around the corner. When we return, we'll wrap up the rest of the conference portion of the NBA playoffs. We also have a couple of anniversaries to celebrate and note, and we also have a couple of stories to share with you guys, plus a whole lot more fun. Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sidney Brown. You're listening to Second City Sports. Welcome back to the second half of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom Style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Cindy Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. Videos drop every Monday and Friday. Once again, videos drop every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at War Media. You can follow our podcast at War on Anger. The podcast drops every Tuesday and Saturday. Once again, The audio version drops every Tuesday and Saturday at War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in that search engine box, WARR on Anchor. You can go to our website, weareregoradio.com, and you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and right here on YouTube. Thank you in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes, let's get back into these NBA playoffs. So discussing both Western Conference semifinal series. We'll discuss the one that is already concluding. That's the Phoenix Suns sweeping away the Denver Nuggets. Lakeena, the game 3, which was last Friday, 116-102. The Suns took that game. Of course, Nikola Jokic received his MVP before that game, but the Suns had other ideas in mind. And of course, last Sunday, the Suns took care of the Nuggets 125-118. Of course, Nikola Jokic was ejected. Before then, he scored 22 points, grabbed 11 rebounds, dished out 4 assists. The Denver Nuggets came unraveled, from Game 4 after Jokic's ejection. Of course, he got into it with Devin Booker, was a flagrant foul, and then all hell broke loose. As the Phoenix Suns have been doing throughout all these playoffs, they take advantage of the team's mistakes. Lakeena, on the flip side for Denver, no one else decided to step up. Of course, the injury to Jamal Murray toward the end of the regular season finally took its toll. But no one else from Denver, as we said in our last podcast, role players like Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., they had to step up. They weren't heard from in this series. Phoenix has been the best team in these playoffs in both conferences. But since we're talking about the West, the Phoenix Suns are the best team in these playoffs. They took care of Denver in 4 games, so they'll await the winner of the Utah LA Clippers series. We'll get into that series and review Game 3 of that series in just a moment. But Lakeena, Chris Paul, as I said, he was the real MVP this year. He proved his worth throughout their series. Devin Booker has stepped up as well. Took a slight step back in terms of the score compared to the last round against the Lakers, but the Phoenix Suns are playing on all cylinders right now. Give head coach Monty Williams credit, who should have won Coach of the Year, but that's a whole nother issue. But their role players, too, like Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, they all in campaign. Yes, folks, campaign. We can blame everything on Jim Boylan as always, as long as we want to, for those of you listening and watching us here in Chicago. But you would have thought that he would never see the light of day again in the NBA, but he's proven his worth as well. So Phoenix Suns are playing as well as anybody in these playoffs. They're doing it as a team, but you have to give Chris Paul the credit as far as players on the floor.
Well, let's start with CP3 for a second. He became the oldest player with 25 points a game and 10 assists per game, which is in the playoff series an all-time high. So, he's the oldest, the best fourth quarter, percentage, 84%. If you saw his, shooting percentage, in the last game, they ended up winning it. Second best assist turnover ratio, 8.2 in the series. Since, of course, the turnover became official in 1978. We mentioned that in the last podcast. Third best mid-range field goal percentage at 65% in the series in the last 25 postseasons. So the fact that he's doing this at the age of 36 is nothing short but of remarkable. And I think, him kind of putting this team on his back. Of course, Devin Booker contributed. Like you said, like you mentioned, all the other role guys contributed. Ayton, and Crowder hit a couple of big shots. Bridges hit a couple of key steals, and and other guys, stepping up to very well balanced scoring as far as Phoenix is concerned. But on the flip side, though, for Jokic, I mean, he basically, I guess, slapped campaign. That's how it ended up being a flagrant. Look, you can say all you want whether that should have been a flagrant 2 or should have been a flagrant 1, not a 2. But whatever. But unfortunately, Jokic did not see the rest of that game. No one stepped up. Porter Jr. They tried, but he tried, but it just wasn't enough. And look, Jokic becomes just a 5th MVP to be swept in the playoff series, and the first since Magic. The Pistons swept the Lakers back in '89. That's their first title, the Pistons. So Just unfortunate, ending the series, ending the season on whipper for him. I think that's something that he didn't want to end it that way. But like you said, I mean, I think Phoenix will show you why they're number 2 seed. Yes, they were a 50-1 shot to win the title, but I think if you're gonna pick whoever's ends up, being left, the kind of like the final 4, if you will, in the NBA playoffs. If you take the Suns right now, I don't think anybody will look at you funny if you did.
I wanted to ask this question, Lakeena. I don't want to dig in too much, but as soon as I said we're not going to do something, we end up doing it anyway. I know that Chris Paul is perhaps, according to many experts, is the best point guard in NBA history not to win an NBA title. Of course, for his personal sake, he hopes to his name not to remain on that list, given the playoff run he's had with the Suns team. But I want to ask you to throw out a couple of names offhand without using Google. If let's just say Chris Paul, assuming that he wins the title this year with the Suns, which would be remarkable, who, in your opinion, will be the best point guard not to win an NBA title? No, assuming that Chris Paul wins it all this year with Phoenix.
Oh boy, that's a point guard. That's At this point, I know he got hurt. Would you put Jamal Murray in that list?
He's not really a point guard.
Yeah, I know. He's more of a shooting guard. Mitchell's really a shooting guard. He's not really a point guard either. So what is the definition of a point guard, though? I mean, who is sort of like, do you want to put D Rose on there, with his injury issue?
You could. Yeah, you could.
Put him in there. I'm trying to think who else, a point guard. Do
you put Russell Westbrook in there?
Is Westbrook a point guard? He's more of a shooting guard, I think.
He is, but he's played point guard the majority of his career.
Yeah, that is true. He did point guard when he was at UCLA for about 10 minutes. Well, yeah, it's true. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you could probably put Westbrook. I think Westbrook would probably be on that list, at the top tier of that list. Maybe if you put D Rose on that list too. I'm trying to think, like, who else could you put on that list that's like that's actually like a true point guard? There really aren't that many. I mean, geez. I mean,
yeah.
I think Tatum's not at that point yet. We could probably say he's still very young, so you really can't put him on the list.
Yeah, he's not a point guard either. So
no, well, yeah, and neither is Zach. I mean, look, most of the guys you mentioned are more shooting guards than they are point guards. So I don't know who would you put on that list at this point.
Obviously, Russell Westbrook for me would be on that list. Thanks for bringing his name up. He'll be mentioned in another story later on in the show that he's doing outside of basketball. But getting back to this list real quickly, John Stockton. I know he wasn't a big scorer, but he's up there. He's never won a ring. He's played in two. He played in 2 NBA finals. Of course, they lost both of them to the Chicago Bulls. We'll mention that series in just a moment here as we go along in this segment of the show. But I will put John Stockton up there, of course. I will put Tim Hardaway up there. I know he never played in the NBA final, but even after his injury toward the where he eventually got traded to the Miami Heat afterwards, but he still had a very good career. He played in a couple of conference finals, including one of them against the Bulls in '97. So I will put Tim Hardaway up there. I kind of struggle with this name, even though he had attitude issues, according to some people. I think as far as he's gotten was the conference final, but Rod Strickland, he has the numbers, especially in the assist department. I think he's still top 10 all time in the assist department.
Well, look, Stockton, I'll give you. Hardaway, I think the problem was that they broke up that team too early. That those Warriors teams in the early '90s, I think they broke up that.
Well, I agree. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, they broke up that core way too early. Strickland, I think he went to. Didn't he go to a conference finals when he was with Portland? Wasn't he in the '92 NBA finals? Wasn't he on that team at Portland team?
No, he came in the year later.
Okay.
Yeah, he came in a year later.
Okay. Yeah, they were all.
Yeah, he came in a year later.
Okay, so yeah, I'll give you Stockton. Like I said, Westbrook.
I was gonna.
If you want to put Westbrook as like current, if you want to do current players, if you're going to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
maybe, but like Hardaway, I guess, like I said, I think that was more a self-inflicted wound on the Warriors' part, because I think, like I said, those Warriors teams were broken up too quick. But again, that's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother episode. But yeah, I would say maybe Stockton, Westbrook, then Hardaway. Those are probably like my top three, I think.
I'm gonna give you one more name. I was wrestling with this name when I thought about this topic a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately, injuries derailed his career. He played in the league for a long time, but injuries got the best of him. He did play in one NBA final, and that's Anthony Penny Hardaway of the Orlando Magic. Now, he definitely would have been a Hall of Famer if it wasn't for those knee injuries, and Orlando would have kept Shaq. They definitely would have won a title, but I want to put him on that list, but just too many injuries. He did go to the playoffs a few more times in his career, but he never got past the second round.
I wouldn't put him on that list. I like him.
That's what I said. I debated because of the injuries. Only because of the injuries.
I wouldn't.
But up until that time, I would say you've been like top 5 for me. One of the best point guards never to win an NBA title.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him on. Like I love Penny, and we'll see if he gets back into the league as a coach. But yeah, I wouldn't put him on that list of best point guards to now win a title. I like the top 3 at that I had. Now look, if you want to add Strickland in there, that's fine. But I wouldn't put Penny on there.
All right, let's move on. Since the Phoenix Suns will get their rest, they'll, as we mentioned before, they'll await the winner of the Utah Jazz and LA Clippers series. In our last episode, Lakeena, the Utah Jazz did what they had to do in terms of holding serve on their home court. Last Saturday night in front of a national audience, the Clippers got back into the series with a 132-106 victory. Kawhi Leonard led all scorers with 34 points. He added 12 rebounds, dished out 5 assists. Donovan Mitchell still continued to play with that bad ankle, which he suffered on the collision with Paul George towards the end of Game 2. Added 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists for Utah. Lakeena, did the Clippers surprise you what they did in Game 3? I wasn't surprised.
Welcome to the Western Conference Semifinals, Paul George. I mean, I think that's sort of like we've been waiting for this for years, it seems. That he finally stepped up. I mean, 132 points. That's got to be like one of the tops, in the playoffs. Definitely, especially with the Clippers franchise. Look, they need more of that. They need to do more of that. They needed, Kawhi did his thing. He had 12 rebounds, 34 points in Game 3, but Paul George kicked in with 31. But they need more of that. And look, Marcus Morris Sr., you need to step up. Nicholas Batum, keep doing what you're doing. You need to step a little bit more. Same thing with Reggie Jackson. Also, your guys off the bench need to start. Pat Beverly, where are you? Let's you've been able to do it.
Well,
before.
He has 7 points, so it's a start.
Yeah, 7 whole points. Yay! Bravo! Yippee for him! My God, Luke Kennard. I mean, look, 6 points. Look, you got a couple of quick 3-pointers, kind of seal the win. But look, you can do more too. So, and we'll see if that ankle injury of Mitchell's, he still scored 30, but you hope that that's not become an issue for him, as the series goes on, especially if it does go 6 or 7, like this series will probably. I think it probably will end up going 6 or 7. So that's going to be an injury. That's the injury that's probably hopefully doesn't injure it worse, as soon as, because we've seen with some of the other injuries and such. So I hope that's something to kind of keep an eye on there too. So if the Clippers can kind of sort of like get, kind of like win game 4, I should say, and just, kind of, seize a moment and perhaps maybe make some defensive stops too. I know it's going to be hard, but you're going to have to defend the 3 better against the Jazz. I know I think they were like one of the top, 3-point shooting teams in the league this year. You need to kind of help, you control the defense of that 3 a little bit better if you want to kind of like, kind of stop on their throat, and, we'll see what they do in Game 4. Should be interesting.
Yeah, it should be interesting. And also on the flip side for Utah, their role players didn't step up as much in Game 3. Of course, Bogdanovic only had 9 points. Joel Ingles stepped up finally with 19 points, carrying the momentum that he had in Game 2. Also, Derek Favors only had 2 points. Jordan Clarkson was the only person that really did something off the bench with 14 points, even though he struggled on 5 of 16 shooting. He was the only person that did anything off the bench for Utah. And so it's going to have to be a collective effort, like you mentioned, Lakeena, especially with given the injury to Donovan Mitchell's ankle. Of course, Rudy Gobert is not a scorer, but he gave you another double-double with 12 points and 10 rebounds. But the other scorers will have to come from outside of just Joe Ingles. Bogdanovic is going to have a good game. Of course, Jordan Clarkson will have to continue his hot scoring streak. And so it's going to have to be a collective effort once again for Utah if they want to wrap up this series.
Well, I think they're going to, well, yeah, I mean, I think definitely. I think if they can kind of like take control of the series with their three, I think they can. If the Clippers can do a better job of defending the three against them, I think they could kind of be. So it's going to be dependent on like who can kind of like, mesh their styles and sort of like, make the other team kind of like not rush. So we'll see what they can do. I mean, it should be. Look, I had this series going 6 or 7. I still think it's going to go 6 or 7. So we'll see what the other, what each team can bring to the table as the series goes on, because the Suns are going to be chilling for a little bit. And, Chris Paul, with a whole week's rest. I mean, he might be like I guess someone tweeted that he might be back in the days at Wake Forest. So we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Before we get to my big story, Lakeena, you had a couple of updates on the French Open tournament.
Yeah, Novak Djokovic.
Tennis.
Yeah, Novak Djokovic, congrats to him, won his 19th Grand Slam, his second French Open. He faced Stefanos Tsitsipas. Yay, I actually said his name right. Yay. Yeah, I know, right? I'm looking for this man this is like his second Grand Slam final. And I actually, didn't screw up his name this time. Yay. But, he came, Novak came back from three, 2 sets down, was able to win in 5. And just an amazing, last, couple of, the last couple of matches for him, beating Nadal, in that classic four set match, and that I guess I cheated because NBC, our feed here in Chicago in the Midwest was like an hour behind, so I cheated and went to the Tennis Channel, and it actually the guys there, the people there actually put together a really good match there, but like I think the Djokovic, I think is kind of like he's one behind Nadal and Federer, so he's kind of like right there. He's only his second French Open, but the fact that he was able to beat Nadal, which sort of like he had the one like 14 prior, and the fact that he was able to kind of come back from 2 sets down to a very formidable opponent like Tsitsipas, and actually ends up winning the title. I mean, actually ended up winning and dominating fast. He kind of dominated those last couple of sets. It's just nothing short of incredible.
Yeah, and also too, I read that a couple of players that pulled out of the warm-up tournament before Wimbledon. Of course, Wimbledon takes place in late June, going into the July 4th holiday here in America, in England. Do you think that the Wimbledon will still be watched by a whole lot of people, or do you think they'll lose at least a little bit of this luster that a couple of their primetime stars won't be participating?
Yeah, look, Wimbledon is always, Wimbledon is always like a premier event. So look, this has happened a lot. I mean, yeah, they've had top players not play because of injuries, or in Osaka's case, taking a mental break, and who deserves to do it. It's still, Serena's still there, Federer, is still there, Nadal's still there. I mean, you still got some of the top players that are there. We'll see how Kokokov went all the way to the quarters in the French Open, and actually losing to the young lady who won it all. Look, I think it's still a premier event, especially since there wasn't one last year. So I think that's going to be like a sort of a big thing. You have like one of the premier events in tennis, back at it, and it's going to be not full capacity, but it's going to be kind of like, I think for what I read, like about 50 to 70%, depending on how it's going to be vaccinated and such. We'll get into all the hubbub there, but look, I still think it's going to be a premier event. I think, look, especially since there wasn't one last year. Look, we'll all talk about the Euros in a little bit, but look, I feel like, look, it's good. Look, people are going to watch it because it's going to be on ESPN. You're going to get live tennis, in a couple of weeks. I think it's going to be right there for it.
Yeah, I just remember myself growing up. I'm not the biggest tennis head in the world, but I remember watching that growing up, along with the U.S. Open, which is another big Grand Slam event, which takes place around Labor Day weekend in New York City, just outside of New York City. So hopefully that tennis needs their stars, And as you mentioned, a couple of names that are pulled out. Hopefully, they'll have enough to carry through, since we didn't have one last year. And so hopefully the game of tennis will shine brightly as one of the big tournaments return.
And I also want to give a quick shout out to Barbara Krejcikova. She completed the rare sweep, winning both the women's tournament. Of course, like I said, she beat Gologov in the quarters, and also win the doubles with fellow Czech countrywoman Katarina Snitakova on Sunday. The last person to do that was Mary Pierce, who did it both times, in 2000 for the women. So congrats to her. She had a nice little win. And I love her comments afterwards. She grew up watching Jan Novotny, kind of like the renaissance of tennis. She kind of helped put tennis on the map for the Czech Republic. So to have the fact that she's been able to kind of now add her name to the list. In fact, also she ended up winning both the women's doubles too. So want to give a shout out to her, and she deserved it. She played great the whole tournament, and she's actually now in the top 20. So, she got about almost $2 million. Also, actually $2 million plus to counting the doubles, the women's doubles title that she won. So a great week 2 weeks of tennis for her.
Also, too, in other international sports news, a soccer player passed out over the weekend and resting comfortably. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the Euros, Christian Eriksen, who's one of the top players for Denmark, in their match against Finland, has happened on Saturday. I was watching the match. He collapsed. I was actually kind of like, looking down on my phone because my mom was messaging me because she went to graduate a couple of the kids she taught graduate high school over the weekend, and she was sending me pictures, and then I looked down, and then when I looked up, there were like a whole bunch of, Danish players around somebody. And I actually just watched prior to, he did a throw in, they were setting up and then this and that. And when I looked up, I saw he had collapsed. And then I went back, thank you, DVR. He had collapsed. I went back and there was nobody around him when he just collapsed. And it was just a scary moment. And Reese Davis, who's doing the Euros for ESPN, he mentioned this, because he saw it too, and we all did. It kind of reminisces of what happened to Hank Gathers 30 plus years ago.
I was just getting ready to say that, and the late Reggie Lewis,
yeah, and he both of them collapsed, and Gathers unfortunately died later that night, and I think Lewis was still he was in the hospital for a few days, but then he ended up passing away. And in the case of Mr. Eriksen,
doing it off season in '93,
and with Mr. Eriksen. You saw what the Danish their doctor said, that he was gone. He was dead. He was dead. He was dead for, he didn't say how long, but he was dead for a few seconds. So it was literally an instant, and it was literally seconds until, and who knows what would have happened. God, thank God, who knows what would have happened had they had not done the CPR. They had used a defibrillator on him, and he was able to kind of get back in consciousness. And last I checked, he was still stabilized and resting comfortably. And look, Denmark had a really tough. They had a very tough go at it, because they were kind of forced to choose whether to continue playing, or go wait until tomorrow to play. Or I saw an interview with Taylor Twellman. He tweeted out that one of the a reporter who's at covering Euros for Good Morning Britain said that they would have forfeited if they had not agreed to either the other two choices. So you wait for I won't get into it, because that I don't want to bore Sid, and now we'll be talking about it for like 30 minutes, but it's just remarkable that it would have been a totally different story had he not passed away. And you saw how shaken some of the Danish players were, and Finland ended up winning that match. Is their first win in any kind of Euro or World Cup soccer. So congrats to Finland. And you saw the crowds afterward. These are two Nordic nations that don't really like each other, but they were able to kind of come together and in solidarity and in support for one of their top players. Also, Romelu Lukaku, who plays for Belgium, he had 2 goals. He won the goals. He said, "I love you, Christian." They play in a club league together in Inter Milan in Italy. So he spent a lot of time with him and his family. Because of course, because of travel restrictions, he couldn't travel to see his family. So he spent a lot of time with them. You saw, if you guys saw Christian, on his first goal he scored, "Christian, I love you," and they gave a kiss to the camera. So just how much this would affect had it been a totally different situation. Now, as far as the coverage is concerned, I mean, look, ESPN, look, they're being fed to what we're seeing. So for people to kind of criticize ESPN for why they kept showing it, blah blah blah. Look, they had to speculate on whether or not they were guessing on whether or not the guy was going to pass away, Eriksen. I mean, so they kind of and I hated that Taylor Twom, who's one of my favorite people at ESPN. He kind of had to sort of was trying to egg on. Look, I think he didn't have to do that. He should have just left it alone and he actually ended up calling that Belgian Russia game. That's why he was off of the sit down that they do like in between matches. But I know you don't follow soccer, but it was just a crazy weekend. And the Euros have actually really good so far. So if you guys don't have a chance, check it out, because it's going to be on ESPN's Fan Network for the next few weeks, also on ABC as well for the next like 3 or 4 weeks. So make sure to check it out. But just a little bit of a totally different story if Christian Eriksen had passed away.
Yeah, thank goodness that he's okay, and hopefully he'll get back on the field quickly. But most importantly, he's healthy for the rest of his life, and so he's resting comfortably. Hopefully, he'll get back at it very soon. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Cindy Brown. We have a few minutes left as we get down to the home stretch here on today's program. Lakeena, a couple more anniversaries for the Chicago Bulls. Of course, we talked about the anniversary of the first championship in our last episode. Of course, as of this recording, it's the 29th anniversary of the second championship with the Bulls and the Portland Trailblazers. Of course, if you guys remember game 6 at Old Chicago Stadium, the Portland Trailblazers led the Bulls by as many as 17 points, 15 in the fourth quarter. Of course, the Bulls had their historic comeback and won their second title, their first title in front of their fans. Of course, the title before they won on the road in Los Angeles. And of course, the anniversary, you can help me out, Lakeena, the 98 anniversary title, I believe is not quite 25 years yet.
Yeah, it's about like 20, it's 23, I think, if I'm not
23, you may be right, 23, yeah. Of the Bulls Jazz game 6 in 98, of course, Jordan's last shot as a member of the Chicago Bulls. I want to flip this over, not to the Bulls. We can sit here all day talking about the Chicago Bulls. Of course, you guys haven't looked at Last Dance, go look at it. They'll give you this perspective from their vantage point. But I want to flip it on the other side, Lakeena. I'll go to the 92 championship first, Lakeena. The Portland Trail Blazers, I remember writing an article a few years ago. I believe you can still find it at wearerigoradio.com. Shout out to NBA TV. They did this episode about a year or so ago, talking about the Portland Trail Blazers, how they were built in the late 80s into the early 90s. I had, during that, writing that article for wearerigoradio.com at that time, I believe I put the 92 Trail Blazers team up there as one of my top teams to never win a title. I remember myself along with Kenneth Davis from Now That Davis Show, but at the time we were doing the Dean Davis Show, and we were talking about it. I said that 1990 team from Portland that lost the Pistons, they had to be up there as well. But that 92 team, they was ready to win a title. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, they probably would have won a title. Of course, Clyde Drexler was at the prime of his career. Of course, he got one 3 years later, being traded to the Houston Rockets. But yeah, Terry Porter, one of the best underrated point guards in history. I know we talked about this segment, last segment, but Terry Porter was very good. The late Jerome Kersey, who played very physical, not to the level of Xavier McDaniel, but the late Jerome Kersey, he was very good. Him and Scotty went at it a few times in that series. The late Kevin Duckworth, who was the starting center, who's from downstate in Illinois. He was very good. He was actually, I believe, a two-time All-Star, if I'm not mistaken. I know he played in a couple of those All-Star games. Of course, he had a young player who was traded in that offseason to Denver named Robert Pack. He didn't get any run during that final series, but he was one of the young guys on the team at that time. Also, you had Danny Ainge on that 92 Portland team. Of course, he went to Phoenix a year later. Him and Jordan got at it a couple times during that series. So if you remember game 2 of that Blazers Bulls series, of course, Danny Ainge took over in that overtime after Clyde Drexler fouled out. So, and Buck Williams, he was on that team as well as the starting power forward. But that was a very good Portland team. And many outside of Clyde Drexler, not too many people give them credit or just overlook them.
Yeah, I've always felt that those Portland teams from those late 80s, early 90s Portland teams didn't get their due. I'm glad that Rick Allen is finally going into the Hall of Fame. Because I think that I really felt that those teams don't get, remember just a few years prior, they got swept in the in the finals by Detroit a couple of years prior to that. So I mean, I think, look, I always felt that Portland team, and they were kind of like right on the cusp. I think hadn't sort of they didn't had to deal with the Lakers a lot, and had they not had to deal with some of the other, if they had done like a few other moves, I think they probably could have won a title during that era, because it was such a short-lived era too. Unfortunately, I think that's probably why people don't remember, because it was only there for a short time. But I feel like, as a player, as you mentioned, I think that team probably is one of the top teams that you could probably say they're kind of like right there, the top 2 or 3 teams that didn't win a championship, one of the best teams to not have won a championship. So, I mean, I think that's particular series, I think they ran into a buzzsaw in Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and they were kind of on a mission. I don't think anybody knew, maybe Jordan did, but I think no one else knew that this was going to be like a sort of a dynasty. And, look, there are some other things that probably changed had they not, had Drexler not fouled out. Who knows what would have happened? And maybe a few other moves that probably could have been made. If Robert Pack had played more, maybe he could have gotten become one of those unsung heroes in the finals. But that turned out not to be. So yeah, I think, look, I'm glad that those Blazers teams are finally getting their due, because I always feel like they haven't. And look, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad Rick Allen is finally getting into the Hall of Fame, because I feel like he was one of the reasons why those Portland teams did as well as they did, going all the way back to the NBA, doing the NBA Finals in like a 5-year span. So 4 or 5 year span, I should say. So yeah, I'm glad he's finally getting his due in that respect. But yeah, I think that, if Jordan hadn't gone crazy in that first game, because look, I think that that game was really close for a while. People forget early on, and that game one, that game was actually really close until Jordan kind of took it up a notch. So I think that if parameters had kind of switched around, who knows? But again, I'm glad that those Portland early 90s teams are finally getting their due.
Yeah, hopefully they have it right. Have that program that NBA TV did over a year ago. If you can check it out right here on YouTube, please Google that. It was a very good half-hour special. Also, too, R.I.P. Uncle Cliff, a.k.a. Cliff Robinson. He was on those teams as well. He actually brought the headband back for the NBA players in the 90s. I know Inside Stuff did a special feature on him on that back in the day. So he was a one-time All-Star as well. So he was a very good player, 6-man coming off that bench for Portland. Actually, one of the first few big men to consistently add the jump shot to his game. Of course, Kevin Garnett, now in the Hall of Fame. He added that jump shot, especially later on in his career, not just with the Minnesota, but with Boston as well. Also too, though I forgot, that's just a name that just escaped me as far as big man adding a jumper to their game. But yeah, Cliff Robinson started a trend that he doesn't get credit for. Shout out to our guy, Brander Scoopy Robinson, now who's the NBA analyst for Bally Sports. And I remember he said in one of his Instagram posts that Cliff Robinson actually started that he was a 6'9", 6'10" guy, a big man shooting jumpers from the outside, and for the generation to come, for those types of players in the NBA.
Yeah, we remember Cliff Robinson a couple of podcasts back. I mean, I kind of feel like he doesn't get his due either. Because I think he kind of helped sort of facilitate the Portland teams. Also in a lot of ways kind of put UConn on the map when he was in college. I mean, when Jim Calhoun played, came on to coach them a couple of years, I don't know if the rumors were that he was going to transfer. I'm talking about Clifford Robinson, but I think he probably would have left, but Coach Calhoun got him to stay, play the rest of them. He actually has said he became a better player thanks to Jim Calhoun. They ended up winning the postseason NIT, I think in 88 or 89 his senior year. So he kind of helped sort of change his game. Like you said, he had to end up having a pretty good NBA career. So unfortunately he's not in the Hall of Fame, but I think there's going to be a lot of lobbying for him to be in the Hall of Fame, because I think that he sort of changed sort of the big man, game with adding that jumper, that long range jumper, because at that point, big guys were just, there to kind of just be kind of like the rim protector and the kind of like the protecting that sort of that rim, and that that sort of like circle around, a little small circle around the rim. They were supposed to shoot 3-pointers or long range shots. Clifford Robinson kind of changed that. So, another guy that doesn't get his due, but hopefully he will.
Yeah. All right, Lakeena, last story for today's episode. Going back to Russell Westbrook, now the member of the Washington Wizards. This comes to our good friends at Awful Announcing. Russell Westbrook producing basketball-related film on LA's Crenshaw neighborhood. Why Not? The name of the film will follow a high school basketball star who discovers opportunities in the tech industry. The article starts off by saying that Russell Westbrook is continuing to use his name and resources to help produce untold stories for a wider audience. Westbrook was an executive producer on Tulsa Burning, the 1921 Race Massacre, a documentary that aired on the History Channel over Memorial Day weekend to note the 100th anniversary of one of the American history's worst events of racial violence. Black citizens' homes and businesses in Tulsa, Oklahoma's Greenwood district were attacked by mobs of white residents, resulting in the deaths of more than 300 people. Another history note relating to that event, if you remember Charlie Wilson and the Gap Band, in 1983 hit You Dropped a Bomb on Me, he referenced that because that band is from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and referenced the tragedies of Black Wall Street. It's not a love song. It's not just a dance record, but it's a historical record that's referring to Black Wall Street at that time. But back to the article. Up next for Westbrook will be a documentary on the Los Angeles Crenshaw neighborhood in the efforts to direct unprivileged youth to technology, education, and opportunities. Titled Why Not? The short film follows a top high school basketball player who learns about what the tech industry can do for young people in his community. Both the neighborhood and tech opportunities for young Black people are meaningful subjects for Westbrook. He grew up in Crenshaw and established the Why Not Foundation in 2012 to fund school programs focusing on computer literacy and technology for Black students. In subsequent years, the foundation has expanded its outreach to help Black-owned businesses. And continuing here, end quote, a lot of the youth in Black and brown communities look at the tech space as almost impossible field to exist within, said Westbrook. They don't often see themselves represented at the major tech companies of the world, and they don't see it as the cool thing to do. Well, why not? Westbrook is partnering with Nike's Jordan brand and Sony Pictures Incubation Lab to produce the short film. Sony's launched Incubation Lab last year to find non-traditional storytellers, including musicians, artists, designers, and athletes, and team them up with writers and filmmakers to create original content. Why Not will be directed by Tevin Tavares, who wrote and co-produced with Lance Cameron Holloway's Grownish. Neither an outlet nor premiere date for Why Not have not yet been announced. Lakeena, let me just say something here. I know that many athletes get the headlines of doing negative stuff, and we talk about it from sun up to sundown. We talk about it way too much, in my opinion. But someone that's doing good has always been doing good within the community. Such as stars like Russell Westbrook should get more shine. I know that he was one of the celebrities that spoke out of the late rapper Nipsey Hussle's death, because Nipsey Hussle grew up in the same neighborhood as Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook was doing the same things that the late Nipsey Hussle was doing in terms of economic empowerment within the Black community. This is one of the many ways to do it. This is something that Russell is passionate about, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to this project whenever it comes out.
Yeah, this is definitely a pet project for Westbrook. You know, like you said, he grew up in the Crenshaw area, so, and I think I think people want to see more like positive representation of, you know, Black and brown, you know, especially in the Black and brown communities. And I think that's, you know, I think people want to see that more, and I think that's always a good thing, you know, to see a positive, you know, positive influence, positive showcase of, you know, the Black and brown communities. And it's you know, I think people are seeing it now. I think Hollywood's realizing it now, that look, we don't want to see, you know, Black and brown folks don't want to see themselves selling drugs or, you know, prostituting and, you know, being, you know, workers and things, you know, like cleaning, you know, being maids and people and stuff like that. So I think people want to see, you know, more, you know, be college educated or have their own businesses. And I think, look, sometimes you got to make your own, and that's exactly what Russell Westbrook's doing. So he's doing, and I commend him for it. And look, he's becoming kind of like LeBron, is doing a lot of similar things with his production company. A lot of the top players are doing things with their, starting their own production companies. So look, I commend him for it. And I think, look, this should be talked about more. It won't, but unfortunately, but I think this is sort
we'll
of
do
like
our best here to do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do our best here to kind of showcase the positive things that some of these star athletes are doing.
Yeah, and given the age that we're in right now, look what we're doing here through our podcast in Zoom for our visual content that you can watch here on YouTube at War Media.
Mm-hmm.
But, during this age of social media, there's really no excuse. I know the players and the celebrities you just mentioned, they have more money and resources behind them, but still you can create your own content. You don't have to wait for those quote unquote big companies or stars or beg for them to produce stuff. You can do it yourself. You build a big enough audience and you have backing behind you. Those people will take notice because let's be honest here, Lakeena, it's all about money with those movie studios, as we know at the end of the day anyway. But with athletes like what Russell Westbrook is doing, is leaving more of an impact of the stories that people that stories that people need to see and want to hear. And so I commend that young man for it.
Yeah, and I think
people like him.
Well, yeah, and I think also too, I think that it helps that because of the fact that there are different avenues people can do it now. You don't have to, like you said, you've got Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and sort of what we're doing here. I mean, we don't have to wait for sort of like the top, those top studios. Now, if you get a big enough audience and those big studios do notice you, hey, even better. But again, you don't have to worry about having, waiting for them to kind of call you. You can kind of like do your own, and then they can call you if they, if they feel it's deemed, and especially if it's very successful.
Yeah. And that's where we are in this stage of social media and the stage in our world today. So there's no excuse to do what you want to do, like what we're doing now, just, talking sports and other issues. And so that's what we're doing. So hopefully it gives inspiration to other people to do the same thing, do better than us. And so, there's no excuse if you want to do things like this and make an impact. All right, Lakeena, another successful show. You've been listening to Second City Sports. I'm just looking forward to watching both baseball teams here in town, here in Chicago, with the Cubs and Sox. Of course, the White Sox are taking on the Tampa Bay Rays as we speak on the south side. A quick note, starting today, you can go to the White Sox website. Their tickets are available. They are on sale for the remaining home games for the rest of the season. So you can go to their website wherever you get tickets. Go buy tickets because after this short homestand against Tampa Bay, they'll return home on Friday, June 25th to face the Seattle Mariners. They'll be at full capacity then. Folks, this White Sox team is good. Go buy your tickets. They're on sale right now at their website. Wherever you get your tickets, make sure you buy tickets to go see the White Sox. They'll be available to 100% capacity. This team needs your support. They have already had 8 capacity sellouts so far this year. I've been to 5 games so far this year. It's a fun time. You want to go see the White Sox play? There's no more excuses. They're open now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll actually be able to get tickets starting next week. So they're going to be 100% full. So make sure you guys check it out. I'm looking forward to, both the Cubs and the White Sox, also the NBA playoffs, also the Euros. You got, France and Germany are playing as we speak. So I'm looking forward to, excuse me, while I'll be watching the rest of that match. But yeah, I mean, look, like I said before, I mean, you got the NFL, they're doing their OTAs right now, or their mandatory, training camps, or mandatory, voluntary training camps, as Keyshawn would say. But yeah, I mean, look, it's good. There's still a lot of stuff, going on. We're kind of getting to sort of like, we're going into summer now. We're seeing, all types of things going on. So there's still a lot of sports to watch, people. So you just gotta something that can tie you over until, football or whenever starts.
All right. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. Once again, that's SidK80, SIDKID80, SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, with the video versions dropping every Monday and Friday. Once again, videos drop every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. You can find our audio version of this podcast. It drops every Tuesday and Saturday at War on Anchor. Once again, every Tuesday and Saturday at War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in those search engine boxes, WARR on Anchor. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, and you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes, subscribe. Once again, that's at WARR Media. For Lakeena, I'm Sid. You've been listening to Second City Sports. We'll catch you on our next episode for the weekend. Until then, take care.
Till next time, holla.
All right, I'm supposed to say that. Holla.
Holla.